Thanks everyone for joining. Just to give you a little overview of the agenda. So we're going to have a brief introduction from Madiha, and then we'll turn over to Kathy for some advice on applying for the GEO Awards. I will then do a short session on some insights into writing, specifically how to write a good application, and then we'll open it up to questions and discussion. So let me hand over to Madiha first. Thanks.
Thanks, Sam, and hello, everyone. We've launched this 4th edition of the GEO Awards on 21st July. We're really happy that Kathy is here today because she's the person behind these individual excellence awards, which were set up in 2019, I believe, was the first round, and 10 people have been awarded so far. This year, we're basically mimicking the process that was done in the past. We're looking to conclude the process at GEO Week in early November, where we will be announcing the winners there, and we hope to also be able to finance the travel of the 3 winners to GEO Week. The goal is really to recognize exceptional work that has been done and has resulted in concrete impact in line with GEO's vision and mission since 2017, so in the last 5 years. And as Sam said, this webinar is one of 2 attempts. So we had a webinar earlier in the morning targeting a different time zone, and the second one right now to do a broader outreach with the GEO community with respect to the awards. We don't have a lot of time, so the deadline for receiving nominations is 2nd of September. Less than a month from now, but the submission requirements are not very cumbersome. You've essentially got a 2-page nomination form that needs to be submitted with a copy of a complete CV of the person being nominated. If you're nominating someone else, then you will be listing 2 other co-sponsors for the nomination. But if, on the other hand, you are nominating yourself, then you will need to have 2 references that you will list under the co-sponsors section, which will essentially serve as references for this purpose. And the awards jury, which is going to be convened, will consider reaching out to these co-sponsors or referees to follow up on your application. The jury will be set up at the end of this month, and they will be ensuring that they will be the ones obviously deciding on the finalists. They will be responsible for assuring that the review criteria have been applied consistently and fairly, and that geographical, gender, and generational representation is reached. Just a final point on who can or cannot be nominated. So anyone from the GEO community that has made an exceptional impact can be nominated. It doesn't need to be someone that is formally involved in a working group or in the GEO Work program, although we do see a lot of submissions coming from those categories, because that was a question that came up earlier, where we're accepting nominations from across the GEO community as long as they align with the vision, mission, and values of GEO. And however, just a note on who cannot be nominated. So obviously nobody from the awards jury can be nominated. We also will not be accepting any nominations from the XCOM members or the program board members or the GEO Secretariat. But that leaves a big group of people that can be nominated. So we look forward to your submissions by 2nd of September. I guess I'm going to leave it at that and turn it back to you, Sam. Thank you.
Many thanks, Madiha. Just to say to people, we will have time for discussion and questions at the end, so we will save that till then. But if you do have questions that come up, feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll pick those up at the end. I wanted to hand over to Kathy now to share some of her insights. Kathy, do you have slides that you want to share, or are you going to speak?
I do have slides, yes. If you'd like to share the screen.
Let me stop sharing then. And
right. There we go. Can you see my, yep, okay. I don't have a fancy background here. This is just plain black and white. But thank you for inviting me to talk today. I am actually very happy to see that the awards process is being picked up by another group of people. We had a long couple of years working through this process, and hopefully it has settled out into something that is easy to understand and easy to apply to and does great things. So as someone who is part of the program board and who chaired the process for the past however many years, even before we ran the full process, we did have some development time. I've been asked to talk to you about a couple things: why you should apply, what a good application looks like, some advice on how to do your application, and some other tips, any other tips that I can come up with. So why should anybody apply? Well, GEO is very much an international organization, and while the members are countries, and the countries have a great deal of credit for what they put in, it's the people who do the work, and the people should get the recognition for doing the good work. So it provides a nice way to say, all this hard work you've done on behalf of your country, on behalf of your participating organization, on an element of the work program is appreciated. We really do appreciate you. And it's from your colleagues. It's an acknowledgement of how your colleagues see you. It's always nice to go to your current boss or your future boss and say, hey, look, I got this award from GEO. My colleagues think I'm doing a great job. But it also gives you visibility into the GEO organization that you may or may not already have. By winning this award, you go to the plenary, you are presented during the plenary. It is a way to get your name out there, have other people understand what it is you do, and maybe make new contacts. So it really is something that is beneficial all the way around. There isn't a downside of this. So what makes a good application? And no, this is not typos. Clear, clean text, good sentences, to the point. Please adhere to the criteria. If we ask, if the nomination asks for examples of a particular thing, like examples of leadership, examples of innovation, examples of whatever it is we ask for, write to those examples as clearly as you can. Adhere to the criteria. I put that in there multiple times because this is just a basic thing. And I'm sure Sam is going to get into that when he gets into award writing. If someone says, give me your examples of work over the past 5 years, and then give examples of work over the past 5 years. Don't leave it out. Don't go outside that timeline. Don't vague book it, meaning don't just allude to things without explaining them. Give as much detail as you think is necessary. Adhere to the criteria. Use the words in the call. This is important. It helps the reviewers see what you're trying to say. And by that, oh look, right to the criteria. Start on your nomination early. The ones that scored the lowest and did the most poorly in previous years are the ones that clearly were rushed. There were sentence fragments. You couldn't really tell what was being described. There were not a lot of good examples, but back to the criteria. Seriously, this is important. Proposals and awards are easier to write than you think they are. A lot of us make this a harder process than it needs to be by trying to be creative and trying to do all sorts of fancy writing. If the reviewer cannot tell what you're saying, you can't get awarded anything, okay? Make sure you address the needs of GEO. This is a GEO Individual Excellence Award. This is for the GEO community to honor our own people. We have had nominations in the past that have been written as if they were writing for a company or a corporation's awards process, talking about what the person did in their company, and only occasionally throwing the word GEO in. That's, in our minds, was not responsive. That may change with the new group, so I'm not going to make a blanket statement here. But this is a GEO award, so make it geared towards GEO. And then as you're writing, go back to the call and check it and check it and check it, because the call has a list of elements that are going to be reviewed. And those are the things the reviewers are going to be looking for in the form. And these things are also on the form. So we're trying to reinforce that that's what we want to see. Just some other things that have come up during the time that I've been involved with this. If you have difficulty writing, I don't care whether English is your first language or not. Some of us who are native English speakers cannot write a sentence to save our lives. We need help. If you're in that category, please ask someone to read it for you. Again, go back to the criteria very often, as often as you need to. Give the whole package to somebody else and say, hey, can you read this and tell me if it makes sense? Do you think it's responsive to this one particular area? Put it aside and come back to it. If you're writing something and it doesn't make any sense to you when you come back, chances are that's not your final version. Read it aloud. That's something that is always helpful for writing to somebody, writing for somebody else. Read it aloud. Have someone else read it to you. Does it make sense to you after that? And then assume the reviewer knows nothing except what they read in the nomination package. It's not really the reviewer's job normally, and it wasn't what we did in the past, to go dig into the background of the person being nominated to make sure that anything that was missing or insinuated or hinted at was actually considered. Put everything in the nomination. Even if you think we know the person, put everything in the nomination. You're never sure what is a known and what is an unknown. And the last thing I will say, which is not on here, is don't be afraid to nominate yourself. That is not a bad thing. Sometimes you are the only one who knows what you do. And if you get 2 of your colleagues to provide references, you're good to go. You can write your own award. It's not looked down upon. In fact, it is done all the time. So don't be shy. And with that, I will end and let you guys go on with the rest of this.
Thank you very much, Kathy. If you just bear with me a second, I was going to bring my screen back up. Okay, so I'm just going to speak for a little bit around the writing side of things. I would say that this is general advice on writing in general and writing for awards in general. I'm fairly new to the GEO Secretariat and the world of GEO, so this is more things that I've learned over the years rather than advice that's specific to this awards. But there are a few things which are, I think, sort of common across all writing. So I'm going to try and give a few examples of those. Just a few caveats at the outset. So I've included on each slide some examples of what's maybe not the best writing and what is potentially good writing. These are all fictitious examples. They're not based on any sort of previous applicants or award winners. So I just want to say that from the outset. And they are sort of fictitious, so they're not based on reality. They're there as examples. So the first thing I just wanted to flag, and I think Kathy said this a few times, but I'll say it again, is that all of the criteria will be scored. We've actually changed the nomination form slightly this year, so that the response text is no longer just a free form, 2 pages, write what you like. It's broken down into the areas where you'll be judged. So on the impact, on the innovation, on the alignment with GEO values. So I just wanted to reiterate that. I think you've got the message from Kathy, though. So the first tip that I wanted to talk about is about action and not process. I think it's fair to say that a lot of our work in GEO is actually about process, because many of the things that we're trying to do are influencing those global processes that will lead to decisions and hopefully better outcomes for our planet, and that's all good. But when you're writing, you can fall into a trap of only talking about that process. And so the example on the left here is talking about being involved in a consultation process that had X number of NGOs and X number of UN organizations, the number of policy briefs, and the number of webinars. That's great, but it doesn't actually tell you sort of why you were doing that and what it led to. So the example on the right is talking more about what that process led to, climate change resolutions, and actually how it's translating to decision making in specific countries. The second tip is around talking about impact and not just outputs. In a similar vein, it's quite easy to talk about the number of maybe tools we've developed or policy papers, et cetera, and these are all valid and will take us towards our goals. But they don't necessarily talk about the impact that you've achieved. So try and think about if you develop something, who's used it and what they're able to do with that. And again, where possible, be specific and quantify. So if you know how many end users were able to benefit from a tool or service, or how many countries have adopted a particular policy, mention that. The third tip is around focusing on you. So these are the GEO Individual Excellence Awards, not the team awards. We know that the whole point of GEO is community and collaboration, and that should be part of it. As Kathy was saying earlier, we do want this to be about a GEO-specific contribution, not to a company or individual organization. But do try to focus on what your specific role was and how that enabled the impact and the change that was brought about. Fourthly, and I'm sort of fairly new to this world, and I go through about sort of 25 acronyms, I think, every day, and it's something that I'm trying to get used to. But just in terms of writing, try to avoid them, or at least when you do use acronyms, spell it out in the first instance, because it's very off-putting for a reader when they have confronted with a sort of paragraph of text that is all acronyms that they then have to go and look up and find out what they actually are. So try and avoid those, and also it's also easy to lapse into jargon, whether that's in English, French, Chinese, all sorts of different languages, and it can sound sort of attractive and maybe kind of align with buzzwords that are going around, but it stops you being specific. So please, when you're writing applications, try to talk about the specific thing that you worked on, and then potentially who that impacted, and talk about maybe the policy areas where that was then relevant. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now because those were the writing tips, and yeah, I think I will open it out now to any questions and comments from the floor.
Sam, I had a question I want to ask on behalf of, I'm sure somebody in the audience. Who do we go to if we have questions?
So you can write to us, and maybe if Julie or Madiha could pop the email address into the chat, there's a specific email address where you can write to with any questions. And we will be posting these slides and hopefully an FAQ on the same blog post where we announce the awards as and when questions come in. So please feel free to refer back to that afterwards if you updates. And also we're conscious that this is being launched a little bit during the holiday season. So if there's others that you think would be, beneficial of this advice, please do share the recordings and information with them, and encourage them to get in touch. We want this to be as open as process as possible, and give you the opportunity to ask questions.
Absolutely. And you can reach out to this generic email that Julie just shared in the chat box, or you can also reach out to us directly. We'll drop in our email addresses as well. In the morning session, we heard from a previous awardee as well, who talked about framing your responses like you're telling a story. So it's a very short story, but it's your story, and the more concrete you make it, the better. But please think about it in that manner, and we wish you success and look forward to seeing your nominations. I'll just echo what Kathy also said. Please don't hesitate to nominate yourself. Like she said, your contributions better than everyone else, and this award is geared to recognize all those contributions that sometimes remain behind the scenes, and we really want to recognize people who are making incremental progress towards transformational change. So please do spread the word, and we hope to receive your nominations in the next weeks.
Thanks very much, Madiha. Oh, we have a question from Long Way. Is it best to focus on one highlighted event or cover different points together? That's a good question.
Maybe we could ask Kathy to give some reflections on that based on her experience.
I knew that was coming. It depends is the answer. It depends on what the criterion is that you are writing to. If the criterion is something like innovation or leadership within GEO, cover those points separately, using as many examples as you think are relevant. So if you were a lead on 6 different GEO activities, you can say that. You can write a little bit about it, a very little bit about about each one, to show maybe a depth of leadership. Maybe one example was a very complicated project that had a very short timeline, and you were the lead of that. So that shows how you can lead a small group of people in an intensely short amount of time to get to a product. If another one is a multinational group, then you can talk about your ability to lead people from different backgrounds and different cultures to get to a shared outcome. If it's about, if one of your leadership positions in GEO was that everybody was like 3 pay grades above you, and you still got the work done and led them through to completion, then that's another aspect of leadership that you can highlight. So I think it depends on what you're writing about. I think the point that Sam was trying to make is that we don't want a laundry list of all the things that you've done, but we'd rather see some detail and real meaning in the entry rather than just a list of all the different, for example, all the different groups that you've led. Because the number of groups doesn't equate to anything about your ability or your contribution.
Thank you, Kathy.
Does that help? Okay.
I might just add, and I'm maybe zooming in and being a bit literal, but you use the word event, and it may not be what we're looking for is the end result or impact, and it may be that several events or activities led to that impact. So I would approach it from that point of view and see whether it was one thing that led to that impact or several things.
One final point, perhaps, we do also encourage you to take a look on our website at previous winners. I'm just going to drop it here in the chat as well, and it might give you some insights and perspectives into how or who has rather been awarded in the past. So please, it's actually linked in the blog post announcing the launch of GEO Awards. So please do also take a look at that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Madiha. In that case, if we don't have any further questions, I will thank you all for your time today. Thank you very much, Kathy, for joining. And yeah, please do send us your questions, and we look forward to your submissions. And good luck. Thank you.